Hello and welcome to Entirely English. We are continuing with our adventures into exploring English idioms which originated in the Royal Navy. These idioms are very important, particularly for speakers of foreign languages to learn if you're studying English, because they do comprise a big part of the English language. That said, let's continue with our exploration of idioms that begin with the letter S. Now, I did say previously I was going to just do 2 videos and add the extra 4 or 5 to the description below, but I've had a couple of messages asking me to do 3 videos, that it's easier for you to understand when it's explained verbally than just in text. So, bowing to pressure, I shall do that. So this is the second of 3 videos regarding idioms that begin with S that originated in the Royal Navy. And our first one today is slush fund. Slush fund. You might have heard this phrase in films about dishonest companies or politicians. But let's look at the origin first. Slush. Slush describes a wet mixture of stuff, like when snow begins to melt on the ground, it becomes slush. Slush is that wet, semi-solid material. And slush in this context was the fat and grease that formed on the top of the food the cook was making. Now, the ship's cook would be a veteran, a sailor who'd had a long experience, but maybe he'd lost an arm or a leg. He was unable to climb the rigging, deal with the sails, or work the cannons. But he had such a reputation, such a long history with the Navy, that the officers would give him the job of cook. A very simple job. Mostly it was just boiling things. Boil the meat, boil the potatoes, and deal out the stores, the bread and so forth. The ship would be stocked with salted meats. That would be salted beef, salted pork, and when you boiled it, the salt and the fat from the meat would float to the top of the soup, broth, or whatever you want to call that liquid. Nobody wants to eat it, so the cook would skim it off. He'd take it off the surface, and rather than throw it overboard, he'd keep it aside, put it into a barrel, and when they reached the next port, he would take that barrel of this slush, this goo from the top of the food they were cooking, and he'd sell it. He'd sell it to candle makers and soap makers. It was an important ingredient. And the money he got for it, this fund, this money he got, he would use to buy luxuries for the crew. Maybe some fresh meat or cakes, something that could be shared around. Sometimes extra portions of rum. So this fund from the slush was used for the benefit of the crew. It wasn't just put into the cook's pocket. However, that idea of money that comes from waste, that is essentially hidden money, money you wouldn't expect, has been transposed these days to mean money that is hidden by a company. So the politician wants to buy some votes to beat his rival, so he uses this slush fund, this money that was hidden from the government, from the taxman, and he pays people bribes. They might have a holiday. They take a holiday in the Seychelles using their slush fund. This money, maybe they've taken a little bit of money. Every time something's sold, they take a few dollars and hide it. And that is their slush fund. It's also where we get the phrase skimming off the top, because this slush was skimmed off the top of the food and then became extra money. Skimming off the top, as an aside, well, let's put it down as a secondary idiom. Skimming off the top means taking a small percentage. So you have a businessman, he sells things, and every time he sells something for $100, $10 goes into his pocket, and the company gets $90. They don't know. So skimming off the top. Slush fund. Our next one is to sail close to the wind. Now, in the Navy, as you know, we've discussed this so many times before, the ships had sails. big pieces of material. And the sails would catch the wind and move the boat. If the wind was coming from this direction, they'd angle the sail so that you got this collision of angles, and it continued to push the boat in the right direction. But what happened if the wind was coming from the front? What happens when they're sailing directly into the wind? Well, then the sails are blown back against the mast, right? So what you need to do is angle the sails just slightly, and use this movement to push your way forward, even though the wind's coming at you. This is quite a dangerous maneuver because the force, the pressure on the sails is tremendous, and the sails could tear, the ropes could snap, and the mast could shatter. So to sail close to the wind was a dangerous procedure. Much safer to lower the sails and maybe use oars or sit at anchor until the wind changed in the right direction. But some captains would sail close to the wind, hitting the wind straight on. And we use that phrase nowadays to mean to do something which is risky, which is dangerous. You say, "Oh, Jack, you were sailing a bit close to the wind when you said that about his wife." Like, he could have been offended and hit you. We can modify it. You can say too close to the wind, and that often means that it was a failure. She was sailing too close to the wind when she tried to climb that tower. Our next one is a shot across the bows. Again, we've discussed this several times before. You have the ship, the sails, the mast, the front and back. The front is the bow and the back is the stern. And a shot is basically firing the cannon. The cannonball is a shot. So if you wanted to warn another ship, you would fire a shot across their bows. So it's firing the cannon, so the ball doesn't hit the ship, it goes across in front of it, or maybe over it. It is a warning shot. So you don't want to really get into a fight. So you see the Spanish ship, you sail close to it, and you fire a shot across their bows. And they realize this is a warning shot. This is a shot that says, stand to, lower your sails, prepare to be boarded, or we will continue shooting and not miss next time. It's similar to in countries that have police who carry guns. I think most of them have this rule that the police officer should fire a shot into the air before they shoot the suspect. That's the warning shot. But we would use it as an idiom these days to basically give a warning. So you'd say, I told my neighbours that if they continue building that horrible extension, I would report them to the local town planning committee. That was a shot across his bows. So that was a warning. He had to take it seriously. A shot across the bows to do something that warns somebody that something worse will happen if they don't behave. Okay, and the last one we're going to do for today is Shipshape and Bristol Fashion. The ship is in shape and in the fashion that Bristol demands. Shipshape meant essentially the ship was in its right shape. Everything was in order. The sails were all in perfect order, no damage, no tears. The netting was all stored in the correct place and had been checked for any tears in that as well. All the timber had been checked. The mast was checked for any woodworm, big risk, or cracks. So if it's shipshape, the ship is in perfect order. But what about Bristol fashion? Now, back 500 years ago, Bristol was one of the major ports in Britain, on the west coast of England. And as you can see from this map, it was an export and import centre for all the shipping. But the port authorities were very strict there, very strict. You could not take your ship out unless it was perfect. They would send inspectors on and they would look at everything. Even the brass things had to be shining. Bristol fashion meant perfect order. So we say shipshape and Bristol fashion to mean that everything is as it should be, and better than it should be, in fact. So we would say, oh dear, Aunt Muriel's coming this weekend. We need this flat-looking Shipshape and Bristol Fashion. We've got to clean it. We've got to make it sparkle. Not even an iota of dust, because Muriel will notice. Or business. We have to do the tax audit this weekend, so I want everybody double-checking, triple-checking all the figures. All the accounts have to be Shipshape and Bristol Fashion. Nothing questionable. Everything had to be perfect. All right. So as I said, there will be a third edition of Idioms S. I hope the people who wrote to me will be happy about that. So before we finish, let's see what you remember. What is the idiom we use when we talk about hidden money? Money that is put aside for emergencies or illicit luxuries? And which idiom refers to doing something dangerous, risky? Which idiom would we use when we talk about giving somebody a warning? And do you remember the last one? Which idiom meant to have everything perfect, beyond expectations? I hope you did well with those 4. Okay, so don't forget to like and subscribe, leave a comment, and I hope to see you again next time. Bye bye now.